The LA Times has released a big new statement explaining their new beat. They're calling it Covering Kamala Harris, a beat dedicated to her historic rise to the White House as the first Black Indian female and second-generation immigrant to be VP.
Wow. Editor-in-chief of The Real News, host of the Working People podcast, Max Alvarez, and senior congressional correspondent for the Daily Caller, Henry Rogers. They join us now to weigh in on the LA Times new series and more, I think, broadly about the media coverage of this administration. Max, let me start with you, which is that in general, the way that we have seen the bootlicking around in the last week has been astounding. And we're talking about CNN saying like, oh, the warm hands of Joe Biden embracing the country. I mean, all of the questions in the White House briefing room, absent a few, have been an absolute joke. Just talk about the disservice that this does whenever the people who have actual access, the LA Times, it's not the hometown paper, but it's one of the papers that Kamala Harris would, presumably be paying attention to from her own home state, is covering her in like a hagiographic manner when that's the least of our problems right now.
Yeah, I mean, this is just weird. I mean, this isn't.
Yeah.
this isn't journalism. This is just lazy and weird. And I mean, like, I mean this in the most genuine way possible. If I'm wrong, please tell me. But is this not what like our high school history books always described as like a cult of personality?
Yes.
Like that's what it looks like to me. It is shrouding the entire reality of political power, both in the figures of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. It is shrouding that in their own kind of personal biographies in a way that that really makes you like kind of have to symbolically trust in them as symbols, as human beings, not as kind of powerful figures who have a lot of control over the way you live your life. And that's a really dangerous thing for any organ in the free press to kind of engage in. I think the LA Times is doing a major disservice. But I think one kind of way that I would connect this to our previous segment, right, about kind of, what's going on with Democrats and Republicans in the Senate. Mm-hmm. I think the last time that we were all on together, I talked about how even though Trump and the Republican Party in its Trumpist mold did very little to actually empower working people, what they offered was a kind of cultural, social power that people could have over their neighbors and stuff like that, right? I think that in a weird kind of mirrored way, Joe Biden and the Democratic Party are trying the same tactic. And this is why at the inauguration, Biden was hitting so hard this kind of note of national unity and togetherness. And I think what he is doing is he is not promising to empower people, but he is kind of making people in an illusory way feel empowered, as if being nice to one another, even though we have committed crimes against each other, that we are doing our civic duty to kind of end this uncivil war, as he called it. So like, even if people aren't really doing anything, even if power continues to screw all of us over, if we're being told by these venerable figures that get these glowing profiles in mainstream media that our job as citizens is to be nicer to each other, while the very system that has kind of ripped us apart for so long remains intact, that creates the same kind of illusion of power that Trump kind of gave his base.
Yeah, that's so incredibly true. I mean, basically, we are supposed to be satisfied with people like Kamala Harris and other ambitious climbers achieving their dreams and aspiration. And like, if you're not excited about that and just like unquestionably delighted that they're achieving their aspirations, then there's something wrong with you. And Henry, there was another incident over the Washington Post. They'd done this profile of Kamala and her sister that had opened, this was during the campaign season, had opened with this anecdote about Kamala that was like, it was a little uncomfortable. She had pretended to be like a prisoner begging for morsels of food through the bars.
This was weird.
Cringe. It was a little weird. Yeah. But it was also very telling about like her relationship and also the ways she sort of saw herself. And they, without really noting why, took that anecdote out and put in this really anodyne one comparing them to the Kennedys instead, without explaining why that was. And again, it had the appearance, after the fact, they said, no, we're just repurposing this for inauguration, and had nothing to do with the fact that that anecdote was like a little weird and cringeworthy. But I think it's another part of this pattern of the media, rather than seeing their role as being adversarial versus this administration, they just embrace it as being sort of celebratory. I mean, that's honestly the posture that we've seen. And, you know, I think a lot of times in the Trump administration, the media was always super aggressive. I think they were often aggressive about like the exact wrong things. But I would take that over just complete sort of like celebrity culture worship and hagiography ultimately.
I couldn't agree more, Crystal. First off, I think what Max just said was spot on about everything going on right now. I think it was absolutely spot on. But I do think that the White House press corps is really doing a disservice. I think the LA Times with this, you know, this crap is just a disservice to the country. We have, you know, a White House press corps who's been saying for 4 years they, you know, care about, you know, getting to the truth, getting to all the real questions, asking all these hard, tough questions when, you know, the rest of the press corps doesn't have access to the White House. You know, it's limited space with COVID and everything like that. Only a certain amount of people can be in there. Let's ask some real questions, folks. Let's not be asking what color scheme Air Force Two is going to be or Air Force One's going to be. Let's not ask, you know, all these just ridiculous questions that no one really gives a crap about. Let's start getting to the real policy issues. Let's start, you know, let's start getting after it. White House press corps, because it really is a joke. It's really pathetic. And again, I think Max is right. It's just it's turning it into like a cult-like atmosphere, which I think is not what they want.
Yeah, one second, Henry, can you just expand on this? Because you actually are in some of these gaggles and more. Just describe how these politicians know exactly who to call on whenever they want to answer easy questions and tough questions. Just describe that for the audience, because you're actually there.
So I just think it's so interesting because, you know, Trump obviously pointed to whoever. He just looked into the crowd and he pointed at somebody. Biden is running this operation where they have a list of people which a handler goes off of. They have a pre-picked list by order of name of who they like, and they go through the list, and the handler will say, you know, oh, so-and-so's turn is to go now. So-and-so's turn is to go now. And it's not really, you know, screaming, you know, all these questions, and, you know, Trump will wave and point his finger and pick one. So that's a problem, first off. And second off, you know, just being in these press briefing rooms, being in the Capitol, being in all these places, it really is a very biased atmosphere. And I know that just from, you know, working for a publication that might lean a little right. It's very interesting to see reporters, just the way they look at me when I ask a question that might be a little difficult or might be a little something they do not want to be heard asked. And it's not the job of reporters to be doing that.
Yeah, so well said. Max, last for you, you're on a podcast recently I know you're excited about. Tell people where to find it and what it was.
Yeah, thank you. So I actually went on Dr. Cornel West and Dr. Tricia Rose's podcast, The Tightrope, to have a conversation with them about the importance of media collaboration, because The Real News, where I'm the editor-in-chief, we are, for the next couple months, partnering with The Tightrope to kind of publish their video interviews, really amazing video episodes on our YouTube channel and our website. And so it was a really cool experience for me to kind of get to talk to Cornell and Tricia about Dostoevsky, my show, Working People, my family's kind of history, and why I do this work. I mean, I would encourage people to check it out, support us at The Real News, support The Tightrope. I have a lot of thoughts about Kamala Harris and the symbolism here, but I know that we're running out of time, so I guess I'll save that for a Twitter thread or something like that.
That's right. Well, also, just come back here.
We're going to have lots of time to talk about all of that. Gentlemen, always great to see you both. Thanks,
guys.
Much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Next, we talk stimulus relief package with friend of the show, Brianna Joy Gray. That's when Rising continues.